CNMI and see how we can promote and support all the work that's being done around mental health services. And so the health committee was informed. I informed members of the Senate, Senate President Jude Hofschneider, Floor Leader Vinny Sablan, so they were informed. All of the members were informed through our WhatsApp group chat. WhatsApp is an amazing tool nowadays, right? And all of the leadership was informed too. So I just wanted to inform you that I disseminated the invitation, and some are off island, some already have existing meetings, but thankfully the speaker is here. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for joining us. And so we will go ahead and get started, and then we'll have it recorded so that anyone who comes back can refer to it online. And so welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Representative Sheila Babalta. I'm serving my 4th year in office. I was born and raised here on the island of Saipan, product of the public school system, daughter of Diego Babalta and Dolorina Wilbacher Jack Babalta. And I am the chair for the Natural Resources Committee. But I was very interested in supporting Uncle Lawrence and the work that you all do because I'm a member of the Health Committee. And I was part of the committee led by Chairwoman Tina Sablan that led the efforts on the SIPACT bill. And SIPACT is the national network that we now have access to because we passed this bill allowing the CNMI to be a member of SIPACT, giving us access to certified licensed counselors and therapists virtually. And I know that the need is there. I've been on the waiting list for over a year for a therapist, and I've done it all virtually for over a year. So it works. And so if we can just have that kind of access, it would be super beneficial to our community. And so we fought hard for the SIPAC bill. We worked hard on it in the committee. We gathered the stakeholders. Everyone worked really hard on the bill, and it passed the House, it passed the Senate, it went to the governor, it got vetoed. It came back to the House, we overrode the veto. And so it is now bill. It is now a law, a public law. And I shared at our last session that that is something so amazing. And I'm very honored to have been a part of that process. So when Uncle Lawrence and I connected this morning, I just saw an opportunity for us to connect. So we today have here the Speaker of the House, Edmund Villagomez, and we also have the Vice Speaker of the House, Rep. BJ Atao. And both of them are coming back next year, in the next legislature. They will be serving in the 23rd NMI legislature. Congratulations, colleagues. I will not, but I will definitely be here to support the work. And so I'm just going to go ahead and open it. Yes, please? Okay, thank you, colleagues. So I'll go ahead and just turn it over to you if you want to introduce yourselves, where you're from, who your parents are.
So, yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be back home. Every time I come back to Saipan, where I was born and raised, I believe I hear and I try to answer the calls of our own community in terms of what is needed, right? So I'm stationed in Guam as the Dean of Student Affairs at the University, Dean of Students. I've worked my way with, a background in the military, having served for 21 years on active duty, coming back home. I believe I'm home. But every time I make my way back to Saipan, I want to understand where we are and how we could move and advance forward as a society. And so my role right now outside of the university, my daytime job is I sit on the board of directors for Westcare Foundation that is headquartered out of Nevada. In the United States, and they'll share what they have in terms of where we are. But and in that capacity, I'm also in Guam, part of the Community Action Council, advising the senior vice president for operations for that office in Guam, that is responsible for about 9 different programs that have anything to do with mental health, from the young age of our children in Guam all the way up to the adulthood, substance abuse treatment, and all that. So learning all that, I thought, what value type of capacity and capability that it does in serving the community in Guam. And I thought that could be modeled here in the CNMI based on. So today is about the fourth round of our visit this year. We've visited out in the high schools, we visited with the courts, and we continue to visit with the community counseling centers to understand the ecosystem that we have here as a problem when it comes to mental health and even helping our veterans. So, in that regard, we made the decision to kind of do another round of visit to the island of Saipan, understanding the CNMI, to meet with folks like yourselves and really kind of collaborate on where we could go with this, with the problem here, the capability that we have. I'll turn it over to, and this is an opportunity because this afternoon at 3:30, the president and the founder of the West Care Foundation of about 50 years now in its existence is arriving here to Saipan, right, to visit. We have the CEO in Ken Orballs here of the West Care Foundation visiting from Las Vegas. And then we have the senior vice president for operations and running the office in Guam with those 9 programs, wanting to and doing everything that she can to convince the headquarters in Las Vegas in Nevada that there needs to be, and I think there's an intention, and Ken would talk about the history of why the name is West Care Pacific Islands in that office that Asia Ramos is running. And I think it doesn't say Wesker Guam, right? It says Wesker Pacific Islands for a reason. And so now I think I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Asia Ramos, who can introduce her boss, the CEO.
Thank you so much for, I don't know how to,
There you
okay. For having us here today, Vice Speaker, Speaker, and Representative. It really is an honor to be here with you. A really amazing surprise. Thank you, Lawrence, for setting this up. The visit today is really important. As Lawrence said, we've been doing a lot of listening sessions, and it's really been amazing for me to be here in CNMI and understand the needs of, I'm going to be presumptive and say our people. As a Chamorro, I think that I consider Saipan a second home. We already talked about a relation with the Kizu family and the Villa Gomez, but it does, in many senses, feel like a homecoming. And whatever we can do to serve our people in uplifting the human spirit, that is what we are committed to. I've had the honor of meeting several government leaders, including DYS, the public school system. We just met with the Hope Recovery Center. And in addition to that, we've also met with Community Guidance Center. And it's pretty clear that there are many needs of the people where West Care could come and help and benefit and provide direct services. And today we have with us our CEO, who will be listening and presenting as well in terms of West Care's commitment to the region. Our goal is to really fill gaps and not to compete or to duplicate services, but look at, as Lawrence referenced, the overall infrastructure and ecosystem to see where we can strengthen or meet gaps in the services for the people of the CNMI. I actually had the pleasure of being one of the presenters. We did a couple of capacity building exercises with the public school system and with DYS, and there's a clear need for youth mental health support services, both in direct services and also for providing skills and professional development for the workers. And we met, in particular, what really hit home for me is we met with the Child Protective Service Unit, and they were just really craving the information and a spot to feel validated in the work that they're doing, and a really sense of overwhelming the needs of the clients and the children and the families that they were seeing. And they were extremely appreciative of any opportunity to be supported and are looking for more ways that they can help families. And that's where we hope West Care can fit. So I'd like to introduce Ken Ortbals. He is our CEO, and it's not his first time to Saipan, but maybe his first time having a piggy, hopefully not. But
I'm being in
Yeah.
the chamber.
Yeah, thanks, Asia. And I can't thank you enough at the last minute for giving us the opportunity to meet with you all and to talk a little bit about West Care. And as Asia mentioned, I was here, it was probably like 6 years ago. I've been at West Care a little over 7 years, and I came to West Care as the chief information officer. So I grew up in the for-profit world, in the consulting world, mostly doing technology stuff. I spent about 15 years in the nonprofit world. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, so the middle of the United States, and I spent about 15 years in the nonprofit world there, helping nonprofits understand how to implement technology, business operations. So I came to Westcare as the technology person. I eventually then became the finance person. I stepped into the CFO role. And then a few months ago, I was lucky enough to be accepted into the CEO position. So I've had a number of jobs with Westcare, and really the great thing about Westcare is Dick Steinberg, our founder. His philosophy has been, what does a community need? How can we help? So that's that simple. If there's a need, how do we figure out how to bring resources in, and how can we help? So I know that that's part of my mission, is to listen and learn, and learn about as much as I can about Saipan and your community, and really take the lead from Asia locally on what does she need to help grow and help us help more people that are on this island. And one of the great things about Asia, we've been around the Pacific Islands. We've been Westcare Pacific Islands since I think 2009. So we've been here for 13 years. And her predecessor, and actually a previous person, we've tried really hard to grow and try to work on the various islands. And we're doing work in Palau, and we're doing a lot of work in Guam. But when Asia took over in 2019, we were kind of like this big. We had like 3 programs, and we were really kind of struggling. And so I asked Asia, settle this on Guam, get everything established on Guam, get it working, and then when you're ready, let's really try to look at the other islands. And so she then went through COVID, and she went through all of this stuff. So the great thing on what Asia did was, since COVID started, she's basically tripled our budget, and she's figured out how to hire more people, how to help more people, and how to grow in from 1 building to 3 buildings through COVID. So she's demonstrated this great understanding of how to help her community and how to help more people. So it's perfect timing to be here. So that's what I'm really excited about, is just trying to figure out how we can help, and whatever it is that we do. The other thing that I believe strongly in, especially coming as the CFO, is leveraging federal dollars. Westcare is really good at. We have this large grants team. We're really good at writing grants through Washington D.C. For federal dollars and bringing those into the local community, because that's how we strengthen and grow those communities. And we typically write grants that are 3-year or 5-year grants. So what it does is it gives you that stability to say, hey, you know what? We're going to be here, right? We just won this award, and it's a 3-year award or it's a 5-year award. We're going to be in the community for this number of years. And it gives us an opportunity to even learn more and learn more and learn more and figure out how we can help. And so that's really part of my goal, is as we grow, we have to have the financial stability behind it. And I've seen that in Asia, which has been really good. So again, thank you for letting us, come so quickly. And the banana was great. So the coconut's great. So I forgot, this is some piggy. Piggy. All right. Yeah. Thank you. So thank you very much.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And then we also have Mr. Herman Sablan and Mr. Mark Mendiola. Thank you for joining us. Would you like? Okay, go ahead.
Mark is on our committee. We just recruited Mark to be on our Community Action Council, right? So we're 4 members now, and then now with the 5th member, Mark is involved in there, and we are the advising body for Asia in helping and working with the CEO. In Saipan, we've designated to have at least a point of contact in Herman. And, because one thing I think I was telling the 2 gentlemen, the speaker and the vice speaker, when I was just for a minute there passing through. In Saipan, it's wonderful to kind of present an idea, and the island and the community would be also open to the idea and listen and get excited about it. But it doesn't become real until we put our footprint, and we actually have an office and a name with a sign and a phone number to call, then it starts to be real, right? And then when we deliver, even in smallest way, as in like the workshop that was just done a couple months ago, it is becoming real. And as it becomes real now, we just need to not only understand the landscape, but collaborate with that landscape and making sure that the landscape um, is inviting the capacity that we have to provide, but at the same time that we are providing the right type of services to the and then and bringing the capacity. Otherwise, we'll be here for a minute and then leaving. And I'm glad that the CEO talked about the grants, right? Because that is important. Because without that, I don't think we can exist for a long period of time. But when there's this backing from Nevada, the main office, on grants that Asia proposes that is needed and desires to have in the community, that is like the the best thing ever, right? Because and I've seen it. I've been in the council now for what, 3 years, and I've seen this. The support that the headquarters provides for our office in Guam, and I can just imagine how much more that support could be extended to the CNMI as well. So we thank you for visiting us, CEO Ken, and we just thank you all for allowing us. But if you can just describe the programs that we have in Guam, maybe it would bring some perspective to what could also be here in Saipan, not necessarily replicate everything, but at least ideas, right?
So in Guam, we've seen tremendous growth, and I do want to say and touch on what Lawrence had talked about. None of this is possible without our partners in the community. We have a very collaborative approach, and I think that's why it was important for me to mention we're not here to compete. We're not here to take away from, but really to add to where we can. We couldn't do any of the work that we do without our partners and do it in an integrated way. We provide a variety of services. I usually like to put them into three different service categories. The first is with our veterans. With our veterans programs, we started by addressing homelessness. So veterans who are struggling, they might have been forced to be evicted from their home. They may have some issues with their family and they're no longer to stay there, or they may be literally on the streets. We help them get them into emergency shelter first and foremost, and then eventually find them a permanent housing placement. In doing so, we provide intensive case management to address some of the other issues that might be going on. That could be lack of transportation, getting connected to veteran benefits, mental health and behavioral health issues that come up, and maybe even some family work. The SSVF program has been a pretty signature program and very successful for our veterans in Guam. So much so that we developed a growth plan from that. We looked at and this is really my approach to services. We looked at the programs that were successful and we said, we have a veteran who is low income, who is homeless. How can we further the work that we're doing? We know that we can't provide it all. So, how can we grow? What we found was that employment was a major issue, a huge barrier. The veterans were lacking skills, they had resumes that were missing work, employment statuses, etc. So, we went to DOL and we applied for and received a grant to provide workforce training to that veteran community specifically. In addition to that, we're in talks right now with our Guam Housing Authority, GURA, to then look at transitional housing, right? And we looked at a grant before with regards to transitional housing. So our outgrowth really comes from these service areas so that we can approach problems holistically and provide the more intensive and comprehensive services. So the first area would be with our veterans through employment and homeless prevention services and emergency housing. And then we also run 5 units that are permanent housing, where we provide light case management, where we make sure they don't go back into some of the conditions that led them on the streets in the first place. And they can be in that home on a subsidized rent for as long as they can maintain it. So it's a nice spectrum of services for our veterans. The second really is our behavioral health component called Uplift Counseling Services. We actually provide substance use, and our counselors are both substance use certified and they're also mental health counselors at the master's level too, so we can really address issues of substance abuse co-occurring with mental health, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, whatever that may be. We provide those outpatient services in our Department of Corrections. We work with the U.S. Probation Office and the Judiciary of Guam through the Brine program. In addition to Uplift, we saw that there was a great need in our community, so we expanded those services. We already had homeless services through the veterans, and like I said, I think comprehensive, right? It's not just a situation, it's a person and the type of support they need. So we knew that we were already addressing homelessness. How can we get behavioral health now involved? We applied for a SAMHSA grant and got a 5-year award to provide free at no cost substance use and mental health counseling for individuals who are homeless. So now not only can our veterans avail of those services with housing and employment and permanent housing, they can also get the mental health and behavioral health support as well. As now we can also offer that to our broader homeless community because we're a part of a network of homeless providers in Guam. Again, those partnerships are really, really key. So the last part of our behavioral health component is our youth mental health program. We actually started out as a school-based program where we went into the schools and did mental health counseling and wraparound services as part of a disaster response grant. Unfortunately, that was short-lived because of COVID. Schools weren't there, kids were online. It was a really big impact. So we pivoted to do a more community-based model. And we're awarded a 5-year grant again through SAMHSA to provide trauma counseling for any youth in the community who qualifies. So we get referrals from Child Protective Services, from Sanctuary of Guam, which is a shelter program. We get them from the schools. We get them from domestic violence providers. And so now we're able to provide more services for youth who are in need. The last bucket of services I like to talk about is youth prevention. And we had a conversation with the folks at Hope today about that. We go out into the schools through the Guam Department of Education and we provide curriculum to the students to reduce the numbers of teen pregnancies. As we know, that has a pretty big impact in the trajectory of education and of outcomes for students. One of the big ones that we're continuing to grow is our substance use prevention. And so we have 2 programs that deal with that. The first is on a village level. We work with all our community stakeholders to, put up signage at parks, simple things like that, to provide alternative activities in the community. We painted a beautiful mural in Dedido. I'm sure you guys have visited Guam before, and I've seen Dedido is our biggest populated village. It says "Life is Malik," and it's got a Westcare symbol. But we took a graffiti artist who is really well known. Opaque is his brand, and the kids, they know him and they get really excited. And we taught them how to express whatever they're going through art. And the kids, the youth that were in that program, painted a village mural, and it stands there really bright yellow saying life is good right at the skate park as a message to the youth. So our youth substance use prevention program, there's that component at the village level, and then a second component at the school level where we provide positive action curriculum to the students directly. In addition to that, we have summer camp as well. So youth prevention services, behavioral health, and veteran services, they've all grown from listening to our partners and in listening to our community, and also looking at the people that we serve, seeing them not just as the one person who's homeless walking through the door, but as individual who needs holistic care to be able to change their lives for the better. So that's the brief.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All of that, I resonate so hard. You have no idea. Thank you for going over the kinds of programs that we see on Guam that we can imagine, and dream of having here in the CNMI. And so I first just want to see if our speaker or vice speaker have any questions.
Thank you. I think that's all I just want to say. I wasn't aware of this meeting, as Lawrence mentioned. We bumped into him out there, and that's when I found out. And I look forward to things like this, and hopefully it becomes a reality. Like you said, to set a footprint here. Mental health issues and other social issues. It's really coming up to the surface now. It's not something that just people talk about behind closed doors. It's an issue that we I'm sure some of us have gone through it growing up, and there was really no avenue or that we were aware of. It was almost like secretive, right? You keep it within yourselves. Now the issue has come to the forefront, and as you mentioned, it affects the future, the trajectory, as you mentioned, and services like this are very important. So I look forward, if we can help in any way, um, to provide all these options, to know, to let our youth know, and individuals in our community know that we are here to help, and because um, we want to make a positive contribution in our community and help them make the same positive contributions to our community, and also on individual level. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Vice, do you have any remarks?
Morning. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. And Sheila, Rep. Bavalta, actually messaged at about 8 this morning. She was on a flight over this way, and she met with you guys at the airport. So I apologize to the speaker. I was mentioning it to him this morning when we were meeting, but she actually sent it to our health committee chat group, and she was expecting more of the committee members to be available this morning, but unfortunately they have prior commitments. But thank you guys for the presentation. It's important. A lot of these guys, it's nice to have Lawrence and Mr. Mendiola back home. Welcome back home, guys. I hope that you guys aren't jet lagged with that long flight from Guam. But I guess one of the big questions, because you mentioned GURA, and GURA is a very big program compared to what we have here, which is NMHC. They got a larger fund, because you mentioned GURA, and GURA is a very big program compared to what we have here, which is NMHC. They got a larger funding source. I was just wondering, is the grants that you guys receive, can it commingle to match other grants? Can it be used to match programs? Because one of the advantages we have in the CNMI today is these tax credit systems that we work with the federal government through NMHC. So a lot of these buildings that are coming up in the CNMI right now are major corporations, major businesses that have the capital to invest right back into this tax incentives that they get from NMHC. It's 100% paid by the federal government, but if you use your own money up front, we can actually or reimburse yourself, so you can kind of recycle your, let's say, $1 million can be tripled within itself if we can commingle the funds. And the advantage that we have here in the CNMI is we have this thing called Article 12, that we can own the property, but we still have public lands. But if we can invest into the private lands, and mental health, like Speaker had mentioned and Reb Balta, it's now in the forefront. I think you two really opened a lot of that up, because a lot of the kids were so affected by you two, and we didn't really understand how to help them, because it's weird. As soon as they hear the rain or the wind, you can see the kids are freaking out because of the effects that you two brought to the CNMI. And on top of that, obviously, you're all very aware that our veterans are crying foul that they're not getting the same benefits as in Guam, for example. And I'm glad that you guys are here to be able to extend that program to these individuals. And I'm glad that you guys met with DYS and the schools. I mean, that's perfect. They're the kids that are facing the realities of home. So maybe we'll get down to those details with the grants, but it's important, I believe, that you guys can meet up with the NMHC. See, they also have the DR monies that can actually be invested into this type of program to assist. And they'll be here for another, I think we have another 4.5 years of those DR monies that are here. We got awarded about $244 million to assist for infrastructure and community advancement and development. So maybe that's another place. I know Mr. Mendiola is well aware of NMHC when he was his time at NMC asking for grants through them. So this is a separate grant from the regular grant that we receive. But I wish we had as much as GURA gets on the regular grant. But I think if we put our ideas and plans together with the different grantor agencies, we can actually improve the financial status of the CNMI to be competitive in applying for those bigger grants with HUD. So thank you, and thank you again.
From a strategic standpoint, the way I see it is that, we have the experts, we have the folks who need, right? The folks who demand the services from those experts. We have the centers, right, in this ecosystem that are operating. And I mean, what could probably be lacking is synergy in terms of like communicating and then understanding the life cycle of the individual. So Asia kind of mentioned how that, like, if you looked at the overall concept for a veteran, it's really how do we, where in the life cycle is this person or this family, right? Where are they in? So if we have that and there's this synergy, there's an important thing, which is what we're going through right now with our visit to the legislature, and you're being informed and educated about this service, right? Is that you're now informed, and then you understand. So when we have the experts working with the centers and they're lacking the support from the legislative or the executive branch or even like in the court, right? There could be this council of synergy that could happen, right? Because I see it. You all have, you bring in the departments and you make them, and you have that oversight, right? You try to understand where they are in the pecking order for the scarce resources, right? And then you bring in and you understand that they bring in also federal dollars. Having that and the support of the legislature, I think, is the reason why I asked Sheila this morning to kind of see, right, to demonstrate that we could get that support here, if only we had this type of meeting and were invited to this chamber to talk about these things, right? Otherwise, we would still continue to have the same issues and the same problems, and everybody be still striving to help improve the lives of those folks. But there's not that synergy. But I think right now, I think this is the beginning of great support from a greater strategic standpoint, and we just got to work together. And maybe one day we'll devise a framework for where all this could be, so that you know exactly what's going on. We know from the expert side what's going on. The centers know that they're getting the support, and then the people in the community know where to get that support from.
Um, braiding federal dollars with local dollars and matching is a great way to increase the capacity of that, and we do that very often in the communities that we work in. And one thing that Asia mentioned, she talked about prevention. There's kind of I kind of think of things financially, um, um, but there's a ramp up to the level of care from when you're doing prevention and you're in a school to where you're providing transitional housing, and so the cost of transitional housing is here. The cost of doing prevention in the school is here, because if you think about it from an infrastructure, well, what does it take? It takes a counselor, a certified counselor. She often has an office, so you lease office space and you go work in the school, and then the school's already there. The kids are already there. So that's kind of the lowest cost to try to help a community. One of the great things about like the federal grants we get, well, that also includes the cost of the building. So we lease buildings. Well, the federal grant pays for that. So you bring those dollars into, right into the community. You go lease space from a private landholder or landlord, and then you go do the work there. Or you can go. We've had experience. WestCare, we also own a construction company. We have our own construction because my boss, actually, Dick, who's coming in this afternoon, he grew the company by taking really old buildings that nobody wanted and that were given away in communities, and saying, well, gosh, that looks really beautiful. Let's figure out how to renovate it, and let's go get some money to go renovate it. And he's just done that year after year after year. And I'll look at these buildings, I'm like, looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, but he sees residential, he sees something. So that's also that combining of And then you're looking at tax credits, and that's a way to take something in a community that's not working and turn it into something that's really working. So
Now I know exactly why Asia wanted to visit the old garment factories.
And
Now I
Yeah.
know why.
Yeah.
And I heard that
Well-
at the last board meeting that we had in June in Las Vegas, you know, Dick was talking about the construction company.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I
yeah.
just did not connect to why Asia really wanted to go see the garment factories to see where they're up to.
I would really
I know
encourage
now
you
why.
to visit La Fiesta. Up north, we have La Fiesta, is an old mall that's been abandoned. Yes, you're at the Kensington, and then if you drive further north, you'll see Marinas Resort. And so that's been vacant for years now, and it's a beautiful part of the island, very close to nature, very accessible. There's also an abandoned swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool up there.
In
It's a beautiful space.
in Sacramento, California, we took over. It was like an old like Super 8. Remember the hotels where you drove in and it was like a U around it? So we took over one of those and just and I kept thinking, how are we going to do this? And we turned it into a women's residential program. So just stuff like that. So
That's
Mhm.
amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think, um, again, I just want to thank the speaker and our vice speaker for being here. Rep BJ Atta was our speaker last term, my first term, and now we have the current speaker. So, and you have two of the long serving, both of them, right? He's in the lead right now, but here at the table with you. And so I just want to recognize our leaders here for that. And some of the questions that I have are around your visits that you've already completed this year, just in 2022. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for visiting the fourth time, because in a lot of the work that I do, especially around Indigenous knowledge, engaging with Indigenous leaders, it's about building trust. And that's what you're doing when you return. When we see that you're returning and you're spending time in our community, it takes time to build trust, right? Because we need to feel safe with you. And so I'm interested to hear what you have learned and what needs you've identified, and how this body, the legislature, can support you if you've identified any ways, any gaps that the legislature can fill in those gaps.
I've learned so much about CNMI, but mostly about the resilience of the community given the lack of resources. I've learned so much about what you all have echoed in terms of really caring for and thinking about the youth. I've learned a lot about the changes in perspectives on mental health. Knowing and recognizing that depression, anxiety, these are all things that could happen at any time, and that today, here and now, they're really relevant for so many people. I've also learned that the staff are truly dedicated. I just really admire the work that they do every day. And I also learned that there's a lot of room to grow in terms of providing critical services, and that the time is right because the stigma has reduced, because people are more cognizant of the challenges, and people are more willing and open to engage. So I've learned that there's so much kind of beauty in the people here, and that they're open to receiving some help. I learned also that the approach in which we do that is extremely important, which is why when we came in, the word listening really was the key. Um, in terms of how we can help. So some of the sort of like logistical things that I questioned were around licensure and licenses. So when you talk about the CPAC, I think that that's important. I'd like to learn more about that and what the impact is going to be. Just so you know, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I was on the Guam Board of Social Work, where we launched the first licenses for Guam when I was chair. So I had a great interest in learning what the capacity is, because if we are ready for mental health but don't have the people to provide that, then that's a challenge. I also learned that there's a sense of overwhelm, you know, and I'm also learning that the system itself, in terms of the infrastructure of which government agencies are involved in what, is definitely different than what we're used to in Guam, what we might be used to in the States. And so I'm still navigating that. So I guess education on that would be helpful if there are any public laws you want to reference us to. And I also learned that there's still some services that are in development and that are just launching it and getting started up. In particular, we talked about that today. So those are the takeaways that I've had, and I've learned that I really want to be here in CNMI to help. So
Glad. Thank you. And we'll always have a pikigi ready for you. Yes.
only the dad makes it
Okay, Dad, you got an order.
I know. I can order for whatever.
And so I guess my next question is about visiting our sister islands. And like, thank you for sharing how you view this as our community, our people. A lot of the work that I do, I reference us as the Marianas. Guam is our sister island with a different political status, but we are part of the same chain, right? And so we are one people. Have you visited our sister islands, Rota, Tinian, or the Northern Island communities who live here on Saipan?
Not in the official capacity, but when we worked with DYS, they brought in their CPS workers from Rhoda and Tinian, and man, they were really impacted by the training that we were given, and they really did share a lot about how they feel pretty isolated because it's like one worker for the entire island, and both with the public school system and with DYS, they also expressed that there is a need for more attention in the sister islands that they feel that they could use some assistance on, or that they would like to expand in the support for the other islands. So we did have encounters with several workers who are under the DYS umbrella.
Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. My previous life, I was an educator down on the island of Tinian, and so I do have a certain, I'm the baby on the board. I just was brought on the board, and so as I'm learning about the programs and the services, and I just know that there's so much opportunity, and I think the beauty of what this program is going to be able to do is expose our kids to career fields and to build capacity on these islands, Rhoda and Tinian. And I think that's the beauty of what this organization is going to be able to bring here. And the strategic plan that has developed is inclusive of the Northern Mariana Islands. And so I've asked the question to Dean. I said, are we going to be able to visit Tinian and Rhoda? And obviously, those communities do have their representatives, and I'm glad that Asia has reached out to them. But as an educator down on the island of Tinian for the 2 years, I tell you, the mental health challenges, and then the capacity. We got a lot of folks that go off and get their degrees, and then often they come back and they're not able to expand that. So we got to create those framework and that framework within the organization and government so that we can provide these services to those that definitely need it. I think one thing that drew me to this was my father was a vet, and it was very difficult getting services for him. I mean, his exposure to Agent Orange towards the end of his life was very difficult for us to watch that. And so we had to travel. He had to live off island. He had to move to California. And that was very stressful on the family. And so as I start to look at the organization, I said, how am I going to contribute and help in this organization? And I just know that this community is ready for something like that. And I like that braiding of different things, education. Currently, I'm on the Board of Education, Department of Education on Guam. And there's a tremendous amount of resources. We just got to be able to put it together and marshal it towards one common goal, and that's dealing with people on the holistic side of things. And the primary prevention going into the schools, that is key. Any youth organization that focuses on positivity, teaches them life skills, those are the things that I think was going to be really beneficial for our kids. And it's very rewarding for me to see when I come back to Saipan or Tinian and I see my former students running the CPA at the ports, or in some sort of leadership, being principals of the schools. I think that's what we really need to encourage those who do go out and are exposed to careers, because we're stewards of time, and when we leave this world, there's someone else that's going to carry that mission forward. And I think this is the opportune time for us to set this framework so that, for many generations, we're going to always need help. That's the human life, right? And so the other thing too, the takeaway, one thing about the CNMI that I love the most is the accessibility to the leadership. I mean, look, this meeting was set up pretty quick, right? And I'm pretty sure in the mainland it's very rare that you're going to be bumping into your representatives and all this stuff. But I think as we go through this process, just knowing that we're going to be able to have access to you folks and say, hey, this is something that we think would be beneficial, whether it be through policy or whether it be through, just getting the word out there, using your networks to help and open doors so that people see that we're really here not for, what are other reasons, political or anything else, but really just to build a strong program so that many of our communities can benefit from it. But yeah, Rhode and Tinian definitely need it. Saipan definitely needs it. Guam is, starting to grow through the leadership, and just to have these folks out here and saying, "Hey, look, we're willing to help out," is a great feeling. So, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's great to hear that, and thank you for being here.
I like the fact that my colleague mentioned capacity, right? Because that's another approach.
Right.
The one approach is to directly or indirectly fix the problem set in of itself, but that capacity is the one that's going to sustain that fix, right? And I just love the way he included education in all this, right? I was imagining someone like Asia who grew up and went up to school and actually came back and is now a clinician and now running an organization that has like, you know, quadruple the size of what she could do by herself, right? That is an inspiration that could be transferred over to Tinian and Rhoda for capacity building. Imagine the child in the high school who wants to be like Asia, right? Or wants to be like that person who serves that community. If only they could understand. And then that building of that capacity could be linked into scholarship. So we're going to look at the list. I saw the list of all the different scholarship that the scholarship office has to offer incentives for students that are coming out of the high schools here to go to either NMC, UOG, or beyond, right, for their education and to come back. Getting that inspired kid lined up on that particular type of scholarship, watching that kid go to the University of Guam, by the way, they need to go to UOG because UOG has a very good social work and psychology program, right? Uh, and I can work on that to make sure, right? And we graduate and we bring them back to the island of Tinian, and that person is inspired like his or her teacher back in the day who comes home back to Tinian to see that they're the ones running those different types of centers. That would be that's the synergy that I was talking about earlier. If we can see that and we can all work towards that, I think we'd be one step ahead in the coming years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think like our time together has been so fruitful, and what engagement, it's synergy happening, right? It's 12:06. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I know it's lunchtime. I would like to just open the floor for any final remarks or questions from Vice Speaker. Any questions? If you'd like to make any final statements so we can just come to a close and you can go out and enjoy some delicious food here on the island of Saipan.
In closing, I'd just like to thank you all for your time, and not really say this is the end, because I'm hoping to see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for being here. Mental health, this issue is very important to all of us in the community. Like my colleagues have said, it is coming to the forefront. We are a community with trauma, right? We have history with the war. We have COVID-19. We have militarization. We have colonization. We have we have election trauma. It's pretty traumatic. That's a good one, Speaker. Laughing is also like a great form, right, of light therapy. There's a great humor here in the chamber under Speaker's leadership. And no, we drink them. Yes. Right. And now, and now today we have climate grief, which is a new term that I learned in Egypt. I was in Egypt for this year's COP